Welcome to Deeply Rooted Botanical Medicine with Stephanie Georgiev. That's me. I also call myself the intrepid white-haired herbalist. And every week at this time, I have a wonderful segment that I personally really enjoy producing because I need this information just for my own sanity. And what I call this segment is This Week in Botanical Medicine. And this is where I scan the headlines that don't necessarily reach out of other than maybe certain journals and scientific communities or industry news, et cetera, but there's so much going on right now in the world of botanical medicine. And I like it because when I started my career way back in the dark ages, when computers literally took up entire first floors of academic buildings, this knowledge was not easily come by, and it also wasn't happening at that time. And now, with the proliferation of consumer demand and all sorts of different things, the whole world of botanical medicine is just exploding. And it's really, really inspiring, rewarding, and it needs more attention in our world of constant rage bait, click inspirations on, doom scrolling. We need some wonderful information that's out there if you know where to look for it. And I know where to look for it. And so I'm super excited to share this with you all. For those of you who are new to this podcast, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out my Substack. And wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe for all the reasons that most content creators are bugging you to do. So without further ado, this is This Week in Botanical Medicine. There's been few notable research breakthroughs, which I'm going to share with you. And the biggie, for all sorts of reasons, is this ethnobotanical research. And it's the discovery of a novel anti-diabetic wild vine. And there was a major validation of indigenous plant knowledge. And this came out of Southeast Asia this week. And researchers at the University of Jemper scientifically validated the anti-diabetic mechanisms of
Ampelocystus rubiginosa.
Now, for my listeners that are a little more familiar with me, and even if you take my online courses, which there are links in the program notes if you would like to do that, I'm not very good at pronouncing anything anymore. After living in various places throughout the world and growing a little bit older and trying to learn several languages, I don't seem to be able to pronounce anything anymore. So if I'm finding a Latin binomial a little difficult, I let Google Translate do it. And that's the Latin pronunciation. And just FYI, if you have a Latin word and you want it pronounced, they have this lovely Italian man saying things, because obviously Latin was the base of Italian language. But anyways, I really love how he says this.
Ampelocystus rubiginosa.
The American English is just not as melodious.
Ampelocystus rubiginosa.
I'm not sure where in America this accent comes from, but if I have a hard time from now on, you know where I'm getting this wonderful melodic translation and pronunciation of Latin binomials in the plant world. Now, this vine is locally known as Tawas Ut or Panamar Paris, and it is a wild climbing vine endemic to the forests of Kalimantan Island or Borneo in Indonesia. Scientists began investigating this plant heavily because of a multi-decade research product led by Professor Ari Satya Nugraha at the University of Jember in Indonesia. And this professor was working in collaboration with global institutions, including the National Research and Innovation Agency and Australian research universities. Now, this vine, I'm going to call it Tawas Ut, because I just don't want to keep playing that lovely pronunciation in Latin. It was used for generations by the Dayak people for wound care, but laboratory and animal assays proved that the ethanol extract, which is the alcohol extract of the plant's roots, act as a potent carbohydrate enzyme inhibitor. Now, why would you want to have a potent carbohydrate enzyme inhibitor? But what the researchers noted was that the root inhibited the digestive enzymes responsible for breaking down carbohydrates into glucose, and this was done at a rate significantly higher than standard conventional medications. And they found 3 active constituents that were unique only to this species, which sparked discussion about using the vine to bolster regional pharmaceutical and herbal independence from imported raw material. And as I said before, why would you want to inhibit your carbohydrates? Why would you want to do that? And this, if a drug or a plant stops the digestive enzymes from breaking down carbohydrates into simple sugars, it acts as a alpha glucosidase inhibitor. So why would you want that to happen? These inhibitors stop the breakdown of carbohydrates, so the real food does not break this down, and the delays that this makes happen, the delays in carbohydrate digestion, it flattens out that postprandial or after meal blood sugar spike. So the reason you don't want that to happen is if you have this spike of blood sugar, then your body works very hard to bring your blood sugar down by pumping insulin into your system. And if you do that all the time, basically what happens anytime you have a carbohydrate-rich snack, let's say a candy bar or sugar cereal or most processed foods, it basically starts wearing out your pancreas because it's making it work so dang hard, and then you have all sorts of problems after that. Now, the drugs that do this inhibition of carbohydrate breakdown, there's various drugs about this, and they're all generic names, so I'll just use those. It's acarbose, and this is the drug most frequently used in positive control. Midgetol, this is a second generation drug. This stays most entirely in the gut tract, and it absorbs things, but it's also excreted unchanged in the kidneys. And one of the reasons why people don't particularly like this is they get a lot of gas, nausea, things like that. So, and they also find that while this can help the body in the long run, People stop taking it because it's so unpleasant. It's not dangerous. There's nobody dying from this, but it's very unpleasant. So they find that patients aren't doing this. And what we're finding is with the plant-based carbohydrate breakdown inhibitor, they don't have these side effects to the extent that the drug does. But this can be very, very helpful in the management of diabetes. Now, there's not a free ride with this. We can still have some of the unpleasant side effects as we do with the drugs, but they don't seem to be as pronounced. Apparently, with the drugs, there's not good compliance because they don't like the side effects, whereas people are more willing to continue to take the botanical because it's not as unpleasant. Another side effect of the drug is that it can cause a spike in liver enzymes, which isn't such a great thing. And it doesn't seem to happen with the vine. And it also shields liver cells from oxidative stress. So you get kind of a double plus there. So while nature can give you the medicine, she doesn't rewrite the laws of digestion. The easier thing here is to eat whole foods with lots of fiber in them, so you don't get this spike in blood sugar. That's the best way to do that. But if you have a population that's eating all kinds of processed food, this is something that you can definitely use. What's also interesting about this research is this is a major bridge between indigenous ethnomedicine and global biochemical research. And as I said before, this is a multi-decade research project. And what is so wonderful is that the researchers spent nearly a decade tracking down, isolating, and validating this specific plant for 3 reasons. And one big reason was to validate and protect indigenous Dayak knowledge. Now, the Dayak people are the indigenous inhabitants of Borneo, and this is the 3rd largest island in the world, which is politically divided between Indonesia and Malaysia and the small nation of Brunei. And the term Dayak is a collective umbrella term, which is basically like in the Americas, we use the term Native American, but there's over 200 distinct ethnic subgroups amongst the Dayak. And obviously they are all quite, unique. And they also have really interesting, sophisticated ethnobotanical traditions. But despite this immense diversity, this cultural, architectural, and spiritual ties, we really need to preserve the tropical rainforest where they reside. And for centuries, the Dayak communities have been using this tawas oot, and it's basically been used as a remedy for treating severe internal and external wounds. When academic researchers began analyzing why the plant was so effective at tissue repair, they ran a comprehensive phytochemical screenings, and they discovered that the root is an evolutionary marvel. It possesses exceptionally high concentrations of specialized polyphenols and unique flavonoids that have never been documented in botanical science before. And this massive, and flavonoids and polyphenols, those of us citizens understand this as antioxidants, things like vitamin C and beta carotene. So this plant has such massive antioxidant profile. It prompted researchers to see what else this plant could do. And what this did was directly lead to the carbohydrate enzyme tests. Now, some of the reasons why you want to encourage this kind of research and development of botanical medicines is that the Dayak people are on the front lines of one of the world's most critical ecological battles. And over the past few decades, corporate logging and massive industrial palm oil plantations have devastated vast swaths of the old growth rainforests. And for the Dayak, the destruction of the forest is not just an economic loss, it's an existential threat to their lineage, their language, and their living pharmacy. And this is why biochemical studies validating their medicines are so crucial. They offer a powerful shield to protect their ancestral lands by proving to the modern world that a standing, biodiverse Bornean rainforest is infinitely more valuable than a monoculture palm oil field, and palm oil is predominantly used for junk food. So this is interesting, and this plant can be a viable livelihood for the indigenous people without destroying their rainforest. This is a huge plus. So this kind of research is amazing, and it's one thing, and if I have a soapbox or an herb bottle crate I could stand on when I say that botanical medicine will save the world, I really mean it, and this is why. Now, the other reason that this discovery is super important is the global diabetes crisis. And this is really big, type 2 diabetes. And this is diabetes that you're not born with. The one you're born with it. But this type 2 basically comes from eating highly processed foods and junk foods and, fake sugars and foods without fiber. And type 2 diabetes is skyrocketing among people in their 30s and 40s. And, the world of public health care and pharmaceutical research is just trying madly to figure out how to combat this. And sometimes the best way to combat it, unfortunately, is through pharmaceutical drugs. But these drugs that help delay this sugar spike so people don't develop type 2 diabetes, or they want to manage it, people don't take it because of the side effects, and that's not very good. So it's just a wonderful thing to explore these types of plants that can combat this and also have high compliance. And also, you don't need as much of it. It's apparently the dosage of the vine is 5 times smaller than the conventional medications to achieve the exact same level of blood sugar stabilization. And the final reason that this is so important, for those of you who have been listening to This Week in Botanical Medicine for a while, you've been hearing me talk about these different really interesting global conferences on what's called traditional medicine. And the World Health Organization, which a person who obviously has type 2 diabetes because of his indulgence in junk and fast food, as the president of the United States withdrew from the World Health Organization, there's a wonderful project that is going on right now, which is really a tragedy that the United States is not part of this anymore. And the World Health Organization has created what's called the Global Traditional Medicine Strategy. And this is basically a decade between 2025 and 2034. And they have global summits on traditional medicine. And there's big focus on traditional medicine. And I've also talked about my experience when this really was launched as a concept in 1995 at the United Nations World Conference on Women, where the draft plan for action in terms of making sure that the world was healthy and had access to food and safety and all these other things, they had part of the draft plan for action in this 1995 document to encourage local governments to support traditional medicine. And most traditional medicine all over the planet is predominantly botanically based. And what happened after that 1995 draft plan for action through the Women's Conference, then there were all kinds of pushes everywhere, including the United States, to start studying, researching all kinds of regulatory and legislative actions, all kinds of things when it comes to botanical medicine. And so for me, what's so interesting is these global summits on traditional medicine. The framework for this in terms of global traditional medicine strategy is to decentralize the global drug supply. And this is basically through primary healthcare integration. And I think recently the other thing that the person who has type 2 diabetes and probably congestive heart failure, his ventures into the Middle East, and they're bombing these incredible botanical medicine research centers in Iran. It's really tragic. But what the whole fallout of keeping petroleum supplies strangled in a certain part of the world, it's highlighting the whole supply chain issue even more than the pandemic did. And also, with the shortage of petroleum, there aren't the foundational chemicals that are used for the synthesis of most synthesized drugs. And it doesn't matter if they're over the counter or they're pharmaceutical. And so I don't think when they started this strategy, this global traditional medicine strategy, it's really important at this point, because I don't think that place is ever going to be open. And if it is, they're going to be charging all kinds of tolls in the millions and billions of dollars and euros, which are obviously going to be passed on to manufacturers and consumers, which is going to make pharmaceuticals more expensive than they are now. And, the modern pharmaceutical supply chain is very fragile and centralized. And developing nations are hugely vulnerable to drug shortages, price gouging, and import delays. And the World Health Organization's strategy explicitly focuses on integrating locally sourced, evidence-based, traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine. And they want to make sure that this is directed into primary healthcare systems. And by validating local plants like this lovely root for metabolic health, a country can treat chronic conditions using its backyard resources rather than relying entirely on expensive imported synthetic drugs that do the same thing with more side effects. And there's also evidence in the innovation to investment continuum at the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Summit. The major focus is bridging the gap between ancestral knowledge and modern economics. And so the World Health Organization openly advocates for moving past rigid clinical trial formats to adopt advanced scientific method, like looking at genomics and, chemical constituents through gas chromatograms and all the interesting things that they do now. And what this does is it will validate whole plant crude extracts. And this will help biodiversity-rich nations create standardized, regulated domestic industries. And this allows countries such as Indonesia or even India, who is really on board with this whole strategy of traditional medicine. They are investing billions of dollars into research and product development and supporting farmers, et cetera, et cetera. And this will upgrade their own drug testing laboratories and manufacturing units, which will ensure high quality, local produced medicines that keeps health expenditures inside the country. And this self-reliance is impossible if multinational corporations bioprospect local plant medicine and then they patent the molecule and sell it back to the indigenous community. And so the World Health Organization strategy is placing immense emphasis on indigenous data sovereignty and benefit sharing. And what I can tell you right now, this is definitely going on in India. And when American pharmaceutical companies and researchers are trying to patent things like turmeric, they basically get their, lab pestles handed back to them while they're doing it. So this is really important, and why this initial research is just a gold mine for saving the biodiversity, saving the rainforest, and helping people have good livelihoods within their own country, bypass these supply side chains, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why I personally get super excited when I start reading this kind of information. So that's it for this week in botanical medicine. I don't know what else you could possibly want. Obviously, there were other things happening, but I felt that this was the most important one that really highlighted the importance, but also the hopefulness and the broad spectrum of effect that botanical medicine has at this time in our collective evolution. So this is Stephanie Georgiev saying thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you want to learn more about botanical medicine and you're ready to take a deep dive, my living pharmacy from seed to Bodyto Soul is now live on Teachable. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is an investment. It's an investment in your time. It's an investment economically. To be honest with you, it's a fraction, like infinitesimal event. It's about 1% of what I spent on my education. And I'm giving you the best of my education in terms of botanical medicine. Definitely enroll in that. You'll get weekly videos, and you'll get handouts and all kinds of lovely information. If you want just a short dive or deep dig, as I like to say in botanical medicine, I do during the month of June have mini courses available. And this month of June, we'll be doing skin health. So you can definitely check that out. And definitely follow me on Substack and all those good things. So until our next segment, be well.